The many faces of the land of Israel: Acre, Mount Hermon, the river Jordan, Jezreel Valley, Caesarea, Samaria, the Elah Valley, the Dead Sea, Lot's wife, Nahal Zin, Judea. The Antonia fortress from the model of Jerusalem. The temple from the model of Jerusalem. Solomon's portico in the court of the Gentiles from the model of Jerusalem. The hill of Golgotha from the model of Jerusalem. The citadel, David's tower. Herod's palace from the model of Jerusalem. An affluent home in the upper city of Jerusalem. Remains of the grand southern staircase leading to the temple courts. Vestiges of channels in the city of David, quarried to deliver water to fields in the Kidron Valley. The pool of Siloam. The eastern slopes of the upper city towards the Thyropean Valley, an area densely occupied by smaller, tightly packed houses, from the model of Jerusalem. Jerusalem in the time of Jesus. Jerusalem. 10 measures of beauty were given to the world. 9 were taken by Jerusalem. Babylonian Talmud, Kedushin, 54a. Before the period of Herod the Great, the Jewish inhabitants of the land mainly eschewed life in the cities. The Gentile city, the polis, with its gymnasium, amphitheater, and bathhouses, was a cultural anathema to them. It was only when Augustus awarded Herod large tracts of land that previously existing cities came under his aegis. Herod then embellished the cities of Caesarea and Sebastia and set about beautifying Jerusalem in the Roman style. During the time of Herod, Jerusalem's population doubled to reach about 60,000 people. The temple was expanded so that it comprised some 1/6 of the area of the city. A hippodrome was constructed, as well as a theater, royal palace, and 2 fortresses, the Antonia and another fortress guarding the palace. Wilson's Ark, a Herodian structure near the western wall. The city's old water supply from the Gihon spring could no longer satisfy the town's burgeoning population. Dozens of reservoirs were dug in addition to an aqueduct bringing water from pools near Hebron. To avoid the use of bridges, the waterway spanned the 15-mile distance as the crow flies by curving round the hills to reach a total length of some 40 miles. It reached various large pools located throughout the city, and one branch, first built in the days of the Hasmoneans, went over a bridge to the northwestern side of the temple. Wilson's Ark is a remnant of the numerous arches that supported that bridge. Coin of Hasmonean king Alexander Jannaeus, 103 to 76 BCE. Beautiful homes for the city's wealthy class were built to the south and north of the city. These wealthy people carved out space for themselves in death as well as in life. Numerous magnificent tombs attest to the continued expansion of the old necropolis surrounding the city. The Hasmonean dynasty. The Hasmoneans were descendants from Mattathias, a member of a priestly family descended from Jehoiarib, 1 Chronicles 24:7. Mattathias hailed from Modi'in in Judea and lived during the period of Seleucid Greek rule over the land. His opposition to the Seleucids' attempt to force Jews to worship the Greek gods led, in 176 BCE, to a revolt spearheaded by his son Judah, known as the Maccabee. During the revolt, the temple was finally liberated from the Greeks, purified of its idol worship, and rededicated to the worship of the one God. This event is commemorated in the festival of Hanukkah. After independence from the Seleucid Greeks, the Hasmonean family ruled the land under the leadership of Judah's brother Jonathan. Jonathan united in himself and in his descendants the functions of high priest, king, and military leader. After the death of Jonathan, leadership passed to his brother Simeon and then to his son, John Hyrcanus. Hyrcanus was the great-great-grandfather of Miriam, the famous Hasmonean princess who married Herod the Great. Originally, the Hasmonean dynasty was supported by the Pharisees, but the Pharisees, put off by the inoculation of wealth and the Hellenized ways that characterized the Hasmoneans and their courtiers, criticized the Hasmoneans, and the royal family began actively to persecute them. The Hasmoneans' possession of both the monarchy and high priesthood was also a source of friction between them and the Essenes, many of whom considered only priests of the house of Zadok, a son of Aaron, legitimate. The Temple. The temple adorned with beautiful stones and donations, Luke 21:5. Inscription from the western wall area reading, to the place of the trumpeting for the pur. The offering of sacrifices. The Hebrew word for sacrifice, korban, comes from the words come close. Giving up a prized possession on the altar was seen as a prime means of coming closer to God. Among the many laws governing the sacrifices were those stating that the offering had to be the property of the person making it, Leviticus 1:2. Only domesticated animals raised for food were allowed, and the sacrificed animal had to be without blemish. Details from a 7th century map of the wanderings of the children of Israel by J.F. Bernard. The candelabrum. Animals were slaughtered in the area to the north of the court of the Israelites. Only birds were actually slaughtered on the altar itself. The priest whose turn it was to slaughter the daily sacrifice would begin after sunrise when he heard the great gate leading to the sanctuary being opened. The sacrificial portions were placed on the lower part of the ramp leading up to the altar, together with the flour for the meal offering and the cake offering of the high priest and the wine libation. The priest would cast lots for the privilege of bringing the portions up to the altar itself. Pilgrims would await the daily opening of the Nicanor gates to the court in front of the temple, known as the Court of Israel. From the Court of Israel they could observe the priests slaughtering the sacrificial animal at the moment of the opening of the sanctuary door and transferring it to the altar in front of the sanctuary. The priests who had been chosen to burn incense on the golden altar inside the sanctuary could be seen entering to perform this enviable task. The heavenly fragrance of the incense wafting from within was legendary. The incense altar. The blood of the sacrifice was sprinkled on the horns of the altar when the priests had completed their allotted tasks, which included the recitation of blessings and the 10 Commandments, the collecting of the ash from the inner altar, the trimming of the wicks of the candelabrum, and the placing of the incense in the sanctuary after glowing coals had been brought by another priest from the outer to the inner altar. On holidays, pilgrims could also see the sacred temple implements on display, among them the incense pan, the table of the shewbread, and of course the 7-branched candelabrum, which became one of the most enduring symbols in Jewish art. The table of the shewbread. Looking towards the Holy of Holies from the women's court, model of Jerusalem. Many details of the temple service are known to modern scholars. The memory of the grandeur of the temple and its appointments was preserved throughout the millennia in the great works of Jewish literature and art. Upon completion of their tasks, the priests would stand on the steps of the porch. Raising their hands above their heads, they would intone the Aaronic blessing. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Numbers 6:24-26. Only the high priest did not raise his hands in order not to place them above the crown he wore, on which the sacred 4-letter name of God was written. After this benediction, the sacrificial portions were lifted up to the top of the altar and thrown into the fire. In addition to priests and Levites on duty by roster, ordinary citizens could also watch the sacrifice as representatives of the people of Israel. Though women did not ordinarily proceed beyond the court of women, at least one ancient source, the commentary on the Mishnah known as the Tosefta, Erikim 2:1, notes that a woman entered the court of Israelites to be present during the sacrifice which she had personally brought. The court of women probably got its name from its galleries, from which women observed the dancing during the Feast of Tabernacles. When the sacrificial service had ended, most pilgrims made an additional stop in a room where donations to the temple were left. In addition to the famous half-shekel tax, Matthew 17:24, required of all Jews, donations could be made towards the purchase of frankincense, firewood, and other commodities necessary for temple worship. It was probably opposite this chamber that Jesus called the attention of his disciples to the poor widow who could only afford 2 small coins. Mark 12:41, Luke 21:1.